We're going to take a second whack at this. This is your test 1 through 75 geometry review. We're going to look at our first question here. Okay, the first few questions, right? I know, and you'll actually see some of these questions show up again later on, which ought to tell you something, right? That these questions are going to be important, and that's the equation of a circle formula. All right, how many of you know what the equation of a circle formula is, like just in its basic form? All right, Jesus? Nope. We're talking about, I just want the formula. Just the basic formula with no numbers put into it. X minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. Okay? What does h and k represent in that equation? X and y of what? Does represent x and y. Okay? Or like this, we would say h and k. Okay? But what are those numbers representative of? The center coordinates of the circle. Okay? So notice that the center of the circle in this case, where h is positive and k is positive, is going to go into our equation as negatives. Okay, which means if h was a negative coordinate, how would it show up in this equation? Positive. Okay, so if the center of my circle is 3, 2, then I should get x what? Minus or plus? Minus what? Okay, x minus 3. Okay, that works here and here. Plus y what? Minus or plus? Minus what? 2. Okay, so that works right here. So that works based upon this, but how do they get 16? I noticed that they get 16 on all of these, but hey, what if I pulled something tricky and I didn't give you any multiple choice options for this, right? I said, you have to type out, granted, I probably won't do that with this particular question, but what if I said you had to type out, you had to write in your box the equation of the circle based upon this information with no clues, right? How would I find the radius of this? Distance from what to what? The center to the outside point. It says 3, 6 is a point on circle A, which means it's on the outside. So if I needed to, I could find a distance from 3, 6 to 3, 2, right? We could use the distance formula, but notice that my x values are the same. So is there any distance between 3 and 3? No. What is the distance between 6 and 2? 4. Okay? Notice that my radius is 4. What do I do with my radius? What's 4 squared? 16. So that's how I get 16. So you ought to be able to look at that, and if you had to, be able to write the equation of a circle with no multiple choice options, right? I'm only getting like 2 people confirming that. Okay, let's do another one. Okay, that's 1. Let's look at number 2. All right, if 8, 3 is a point on circle K, the center of this is 8, 1. Now, granted, okay, I don't know. You can probably still read that through there, but in any case, all right, if my center is 8, 1, I'm going to write x what? Minus or plus? Minus what? 8 what? Squared plus minus 1 squared. All right, and I'm looking for the distance. Is there any distance between 8 and 8? No. What's the distance between 3 and 1? 2. My radius is squared, right? So what's 2 squared? 4. Okay, so my equation should be x minus 8 squared plus y minus 1 squared equals 4. All right, let's see if there's any that fit that. Is there anything up there? B. Okay, x minus 8 squared plus y minus 1 squared equals 4. Can we do that? Yes. All right, and because you see this question show up more than once, it means this question, you're probably going to get one very similar to it on the test. Okay, so perk up. Anytime I see the same question show up, or same question type show up more than once on the review, okay, Make sure that you understand it. Which of the following is the mapping notation for a transformation of a reflection of t across the y-axis? Okay, so let's see. I'm gonna let's erase this here first. Let's do this. Sometimes people get confused. I want to make sure that we understand. Which one of those lines is the y-axis, Mariah? Red or blue? Red. Red is the y-axis. Okay? Okay? So sometimes to better understand it, okay, it's easiest to, let's say, put a point on and just do it. Okay? What's the coordinates of that point? 1, 1. Okay, if I want to reflect it across the y-axis, that means it's going to go from the right side of the y-axis to the what side of the y-axis? Left side. Okay? How far is it going to go? It's going to be where? What are the coordinates of the other point going to be? Negative 1, 1. So what did you notice between the x and y's? Okay, did the x's change? Okay? Did the y's change? No. So when we reflect something across the y-axis, we should notice a pattern, okay, that the x becomes what? And the y what? Stays the same. Okay? So if I had to show work, I would show something like that, where I'm giving an example, right, of noticing the relationship as I reflect something across the y-axis. Okay? Now, if the question was reflected across the x-axis, then I would wind up down here. You would notice that I would be at 1, negative 1. You would see that the x stays the same, but the y changes. Right? Okay. So we should see our answer here as what? A? Okay? Does that make sense? Do we understand what kind of work would work to get credit for that question? Okay? All right, number 4. Okay, if a triangle is equilateral, what is it also? Equiangular. And an equiangular triangle, what do I know? What's the relationship between all 3 of those angles? They're all equal. All right? Would I know automatically what each angle of an equiangular triangle is? How? Divide what by 3? Take 180. Why 180? The total number of degrees in a triangle is 180. You're going to divide it by 3. So each angle equals what? Okay, so this is equal to 60. This is equal to 60. And this is equal to 60. So if I want to solve for Q, what do I need to do? Subtract 35 from 60. So Q equals what? 25 degrees. Okay? Easy? I hope so. Okay. You notice me double checking to make sure that my mic is still on. So I do not want to record all of this a 3rd time. All right, number 4. Use the diagonals to determine whether a parallelogram with these vertices is a rectangle, rhombus, or a square. Give all the names that apply. Let's see. This question ends up being somewhat of a pain just because I don't have a coordinate grid up here. But let's do it anyway. We got 1, negative 1, negative 2. Okay, let's just make some marks through here. Okay. All right, negative 1, negative 2. So about there. Okay, negative 2, 0. There. 0, 1. Here. And 1, negative 1. Now, granted, this is the problem that you get when you don't use graph paper. You guys should use graph paper on a question like this, because you notice that my tick marks are not perfectly apart. Okay? So if I wanted to determine whether or not this was a rectangle, what do I know? What are the attributes of a rectangle? What do I know about, let's say, its angles? They are congruent, okay? And if it's a four-sided figure where all 4 sides are congruent, what do I know all 4 angles are going to be? 90 degrees, right? In order for angles to be 90 degrees, it means that the lines that meet have to be perpendicular to each other. So I would have to know the slope, and then I would have to see whether or not those lines were perpendicular to each other, which really isn't too bad in this question, because if you notice from here, I'm going up 1 over 2. All right, so that has a slope of 1/2, right? Okay, which means this one from here to here would have to have an opposite reciprocal slope, which means it would have to go down 2 over 1. Okay, could we say that these two lines right there are perpendicular to each other? Because they have opposite reciprocal slopes. Okay, from here, I'm going down 2 over 1, right? So you'll notice that this, let's see, if we said that this is 1/2, we said that this was -2, right? This is -2, right? You'll notice that this goes up 1 over 2, has a slope of 1/2. So I noticed two things, right? We know it's a parallelogram, right? Because opposite sides are parallel to each other, correct? Okay? And we notice that these are perpendicular as they go across, right? Okay, but all I've proven right now is that this is a rectangle. Okay, now, so we could say, hey, I know that this is a rectangle because all 4 angles are right angles. Okay, next thing would be whether or not it's a rhombus. Okay, how could I prove that that's a rhombus? Can a quadrilateral be a rectangle and a rhombus at the same time? Yeah? What do we know about rhombuses? Rhombi? Anybody? Guesses? Thoughts? Surmises? Philosophies about rhombuses? Conjectures? Maybe there's something in our book that says something about a rhombus, maybe even in the back of the book somewhere. Listen, I can stand here all day. I've already made the video. You guys can watch what I made, right? Or we can just sit here and stare at each other for the next however many minutes. You guys took notes, right? Look it up. Use your resources. Google it. Right? You got a Chromebook sitting in front of you. Has 4 equal sides. How could I tell if this had 4 equal sides? Pythagorean theorem, okay? So up 1 over 2, so we would notice that this line was the hypotenuse of that red right triangle. So I could do, 1 squared plus 2 squared equals c squared. That's 1 plus 4. That's 5. So square root of 5. I could say, boom, this guy right here, that's the square root of 5 in distance. All right? This is 2, this is 1, right? Does that use the same numbers? All right, so it'd say, boom, that guy right there is square root of 5. That one goes up 1 over 2, so he's still using 1, 2, right? Square root of 5. This guy's going down 2 over 1. He's still using those same numbers. So all 4 sides, are all 4 sides congruent? Yes, they are. All right. So we've said that this is a rectangle and it's a rhombus. So what is it also? A square. So we have proven that it is a square, not just said it's a square because it looks like a square. All right.